Somewhere beneath the Antarctic ice, a glacier the size of Florida is dying. Not slowly, not gradually. Right now, at this moment, it is collapsing from the inside out. And when it goes, the maps you've known your entire life will be wrong. Scientists call it Thwaites. Journalists call it the Doomsday Glacier. Both names are accurate. Here's what makes Thwaites different from every other glacier on Earth. It isn't just melting at the surface. The collapse is happening underneath, where warm ocean water has carved caverns the size of Manhattan into the base of the ice. In 2023, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory confirmed that a cavity roughly 14 kilometers wide and 300 meters tall had formed in just 3 years. 3 years. That's not erosion, that's disintegration. Right now, Thwaites is holding back enough ice to raise global sea levels by 65 centimeters on its own. But it isn't alone. Behind it, like dominoes lined up across the West Antarctic ice sheet, sit glaciers holding enough water to raise seas by 3 meters total. Thwaites is the plug in the drain, and the plug is failing. In 2022, British and American scientists deployed underwater robots beneath the glacier for the first time in history. What they found rewritten every climate model that came before it. The melt rate at the grounding line, where ice meets bedrock, was accelerating faster than any existing projection had predicted. The data was so alarming that the lead researchers publicly stated that they were surprised. Scientists trained to be conservative, trained to understate, said out loud that the situation was worse than they expected. Think about that for a second. The people paid to worry about this glacier were caught off guard. And in 2024, something in the data changed again. But before we get there, you need to understand why Thwaites moves the way it does. Because the physics of this glacier aren't like anything else on the planet. And once you understand them, the timeline changes completely. Most glaciers lose ice from the top down. Wind, sun, temperature, surface melt. You can model that. You can slow it. Thwaites loses ice from the bottom up, and that changes everything. Here's the mechanism. Beneath the glacier, the bedrock doesn't slope upward toward the ocean like most glaciers. It slopes downward, away from the coast, into the continent. Scientists call this a retrograde bed slope, and it is the reason Thwaites is considered irreversible once a certain threshold is crossed. As warm ocean water eats into the base of the ice, the grounding line, the point where the glacier is still anchored to bedrock, retreats inland. But as it retreats, the ice above it gets thicker and heavier. More weight pushes down, more ice breaks off, which exposes more area to warm water, which accelerates the retreat further. This is not a linear process, it is a feedback loop. And feedback loops, by definition, don't stop on their own. The technical term is marine ice sheet instability, but the real term is a point of no return. ITGC researchers published findings in 2023 estimating that parts of Thwaites may already be past that threshold. Not approaching it, past it. But here's what they're not telling you in the headlines. The most recent satellite data, compiled by the European Space Agency in late 2024, shows the eastern ice shelf of Thwaites, the section previously considered more stable, is now fracturing along previously undetected fault lines. Crevices that weren't there 18 months ago are spreading toward the center of the shelf. Think about what that means. The stable section is no longer stable. The ITGC's lead glaciologist, Dr. Ted Scambos, stated in late 2023 that Thwaites could experience a major structural failure event within 3 to 5 years. Not a slow melt, a structural failure. Chunks the size of cities
calving into the Amundsen Sea in a matter of weeks. And when that happens, the glaciers behind it will accelerate, because the plug will be gone. Let's talk about what this actually looks like on a map. Not in 100 years, in 50, in 30, in the lifetimes of children who are alive right now. The IPCC's 6th assessment report projects that under high-emissions scenarios, global sea levels could rise between 1 and 2 meters by 2100. But that projection does not fully account for a rapid structural collapse of Thwaites. When scientists at the British Antarctic Survey model a sudden destabilization event, the numbers shift dramatically. Miami. 60% of the city sits less than 2 meters above current sea level. A 1-meter rise combined with a Category 4 hurricane storm surge permanently inundates neighborhoods that are home to 2.7 million people. Not temporarily, permanently. You're in Miami Beach, it's 2065. The street you grew up on is underwater, not after a storm, always. But Miami is just the beginning. Shanghai, Dhaka, Jakarta, Lagos, Mumbai, cities holding a combined population of over 80 million people, all sitting at or near current sea level. The World Bank estimates that without adaptation infrastructure costing trillions of dollars, up to 216 million people could be displaced by climate-driven sea level rise by 2050. That's not a refugee crisis. That's the largest forced migration in human history. And here's what most coverage misses. It isn't just coastal flooding. When salt water infiltrates freshwater aquifers, it contaminates drinking water for regions that depend on them. Bangladesh, Vietnam's Mekong Delta, the state of Florida itself, all face groundwater salinity crises that begin well before the streets flood. The damage starts underground, invisible, years before the water reaches your door. Subscribe to the Doomsday Archive so you don't miss what comes next, because the human cost of what we're describing goes deeper than any flood map shows. The storm surge, the salinity, the displacement. That's still not the worst part. The food system is next.
When a glacier collapses, people imagine flooding. That's the visible part. What they don't imagine is what happens to the systems that keep civilization running. Agriculture first. The regions most vulnerable to sea level rise, river deltas in South and Southeast Asia, the Nile Delta in Egypt, the Mississippi Delta in Louisiana, produce a disproportionate share of the world's rice, wheat, and fish. When salt water intrudes, crop yields collapse, not for one season, permanently, until the land is abandoned or desalinated at enormous cost. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization projects that a 1-meter sea level rise could eliminate 30% of global coastal agricultural land. 30%. And here's what they're not telling you at the policy level. Most national infrastructure, power grids, sewage systems, transportation networks, was built with a fixed sea level in mind, a sea level that no longer exists in the models. FEMA's own flood maps for the United States are currently based on historical data that does not account for accelerated Antarctic melt, which means the insurance industry, municipal planning, and federal disaster response are all operating on numbers that are already wrong. Tested? No. Updated for Thwaites projections? Not yet. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers estimated in 2022 that upgrading coastal infrastructure to handle projected sea level rise would cost $940 billion over the next 50 years. That money has not been allocated. The planning has not begun in most cities. Days, not decades. That's how long it takes for a major hurricane hitting a coast with 18 inches of additional sea level to turn a manageable disaster into a catastrophic one.
But there is something governments can do, and a few are already doing it. The Netherlands has spent over 40 years building the Delta Works, a flood infrastructure system so advanced that engineers from every coastal nation in the world travel there to study it. Rotterdam now designs every new building with the assumption that the ground floor will eventually be unusable. That's not pessimism, that's engineering reality. Subscribe to the Doomsday Archive and stay ahead of what your city planners are only beginning to discuss, because the adaptation window isn't closing, but it is narrowing. And the question isn't whether nations will act, it's whether they'll act in time.
So, where does this leave us? Thwaites is not a distant threat. It is an active process, happening right now, measured in real time by satellites and underwater robots and ice-penetrating radar arrays. The question scientists are debating is not whether it will destabilize, it's how fast. The ITGC's most conservative projection puts significant sea level contribution from Thwaites at between 20 and 60 centimeters by 2100. Their least conservative projection, accounting for rapid structural failure, reaches over a meter from Thwaites alone. 1 glacier, 1 meter. And here's the number that should stay with you. Every centimeter of sea level rise exposes an additional 6 million people to annual flood risk globally. That's the estimate from Climate Central's 2023 Coastal Risk Analysis. Every centimeter. So the difference between aggressive climate action taken today and inaction over the next decade isn't abstract. It's measured in tens of millions of people, in cities, in food systems, in the groundwater beneath towns that have no idea what's coming for them. The honest probability assessment is this. Scientists cannot tell you exactly when Thwaites will experience a major calving event. They can tell you the physical conditions for one are present. They can tell you the trend lines are moving in one direction. And they can tell you that the window to influence the outcome, not prevent it entirely, but shape how bad it gets, is measured in years, not generations. This isn't about doomsday, it's about decisions. The science is clear. The engineering solutions exist. The adaptation strategies are documented. What doesn't yet exist is the political will to treat a slow-moving catastrophe with the urgency of a fast one. Thwaites will not collapse overnight, but it will collapse. And when it does, it will be the most consequential geological event in recorded human history, not because of what it destroys in a day, but because of what it permanently changes about the world your children inherit. The maps are already being redrawn. The question is whether we redraw them or drown in them. This is the Doomsday Archive. If this changed how you see the world, subscribe. New predictions every week. Tomorrow is coming. The question is, will you be ready?